Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the red rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2, Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low Magazine? Because 4Low Magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. Thank you for joining us today. Today's guest will be none other than Brad Lovell of Lovell Racing, and we're very pleased to have him on board. He's a very accomplished racer in a number of different venues, but I believe rock crawling was his start. But we'll find out his whole story right now. Well, Brad Lovell, long time no see, KOH, I guess it was. Glad to have you on board, and we'd like to discuss kind of your relationship with motorsports and how you all got started, and a little bit about your life, and give us some insight on who, Brad Lovell really is.
Well, right on, Rich. I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here and kind of share my story. I whenever anybody asks me about how we got started or how we got going in this, I always tell them it's passion. It's driven by passion. And really, years ago, we got involved through just going camping in the Colorado mountains here. I think it was like 1983. My dad, we got a big Bronco, right? And we had this little pop-up trailer. We actually rented one. We started going up camping in the mountains. And I was 7 or 8 at that time. I loved being in the mountains. We did like 3 trips every summer, and I just loved being up there. And I always wanted to go exploring. And I can remember sitting in the back seat of that Bronco, Roger and I, and saying, Dad, come on, let's keep going. Let's go see where this road goes and go up to this mine and up that hill. And he'd go do some, but he was fairly conservative. And I always remembered thinking, man, I just want to know where that road goes and what's up this fork. And I remember him saying, it's a dead end. It's like, I don't care if it's a dead end. I want to go see what's at the end of that road.
Yeah, because the road ends.
But the road is the reason why you go, right? It's not. Correct. And what's at the end of it is only the added prize. So summer after summer we went on doing that, and then Roger, he's 3 years older than I am. So gosh, I'm trying to think what year it was.
I was going to ask that, who was older. So I'm glad you hit that early.
Roger's older, so maybe it was. Let's see, he was born in 73. So when was he 16? That would have been 89, I guess, right around 89, 90. He turned 16, and he got a Bronco too. And that was his prized possession, right? So now he and I can go off. And we went off with our buddy Dave, who still comes out to the King of the Hammers with us, my cousin Mark. And we were able to start camping by ourselves and looking for some more adventure and going to see some more of these roads. 3 years later, I got a Ford Ranger, an 88 Ranger, and that was my prized possession. I remember my dad bought it for me, and we went down to the dealership to look at it. It was a used Ranger. I remember looking at it. My dad's haggling with the guy, and we walked away over like $125 or something. It was $125 or $165, and I was pissed at him, because that's the truck I wanted. So I remember I go home, I go to school the next day, and he's like, hey, go get something in the garage. And I grumbled at him, and I walk out, and there's the truck in the garage. So
awesome. That's great.
That's pretty cool. But so now I had my truck, Roger had his, and again, my cousin Mark, our buddy Dave, So now there's 4 of us, and now it's like it's on now, right? Because we can all go, and we're challenging ourselves, trying more difficult trails in Colorado, and it took a while to progress. And my dad kind of came along. He bought a '76 Bronco that we still have, and during high school, I kind of fixed that up in the garage, and Roger helped out. He was at college at the time, so he kind of joined in, and we did a lot of off-roading. We started reaching further and going further, and I was going to school in Wyoming at the time, and boy, I remember I broke a rear axle up there, and I changed a rear axle in an icy parking lot and freezing wind. I mean, both Roger and I, we struggled for this and worked for this. During that college time, like right when I was graduating, I remember I took a trip out through Utah, like a 2-week trip, just all by myself in my truck, because I wanted to go see stuff, you know. Went and saw a bunch of national parks, and then went down to Cedar City, because I'd been watching rock crawling kind of start to evolve, competitive rock crawling. I thought, man, that's some pretty cool stuff. And I remember I went to Cedar City out at Three Peaks, and it was the very first rock crawl I watched. And I thought, oh man, this is for me, you know, how can I get in? And I was still figuring it out, you know, I was young and trying to figure out the money, and I didn't have a rock crawler. I had my Ranger that I'd been fixing up and working on. So I guess I did that, and I think it was later in the year. You remember the Super Crawl where they did the poster of Walker Evans rolled down in
Yep.
Farmington? I happened to be standing like right about where that picture was shot during that time. I had drugged my brother and my cousin down for that event, and that was it. That was enough to put us over the top. And I bought a Dana 60 front end from Craigslist, or actually is, you know, the classifieds at that time, in Farmington, hauled it home with us, and I tore down my daily driver, my 88 Ranger, and turned it into a competition rock crawler. At that point, I had just gotten my own house, and it's like, man, maybe there's a way to do this. So I had my own garage. So at that point, I went and found an old F-250 I could tow it around with. Remember, I bought my first flatbed. I mean, these are big purchases when I was a kid, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So about that time, I was getting involved with Natalie, and my wife now. She's over here working from home, by the way. She's probably going to be glaring at me here a little bit. We were getting involved, and you know, so I'm building my rock crawler in the garage with Roger and everybody coming over at nights and helping. And you know, it takes everything you have. It takes all your money, all your time, and it was coming out great. And I don't think I was going to get that project done without and keep Natalie around at the same time. And she had all these talks and discussions. She's going to go to Europe and go on some hike with a bunch of friends. And I'm thinking, no, that's not going to happen. So anyway, during the whole process, I ended up proposing to her. So it was kind of a big point in my life, because a lot of things changed, because now I'm focused on racing, I'm engaged, and you know, a lot of things changed. And the very first event we went to, I can remember we went out and tested the truck in the snow and cold, and it worked okay. But you got to remember, you know, we did this as a group of enthusiasts. There were just 4 of us. And we went and did some cool stuff in Moab and in Colorado, in western slope of Colorado. But we didn't go to big rallies and stuff, you know. We wanted to get good, but we weren't about showboating, I guess. You know, we were out there for the love of it and the challenge. So the very first event we went to, I remember I pulled up to the BFG semi and bought some crawlers and had them bolt them on there. And boy, I felt great about that. And it was the U-Rock in St. George, Utah. And that was very memorable, because that's the event where U-Rock and ARCA combined. And it was a train wreck. It had to be the most disorganized event I've ever been to, and the courses were screwed up, and we could only do 2 courses a day because everything was messed up. And I remember the very first course, I had to go down this huge steep rock slab, and I'm freaking out, and I was pressing on the brakes so hard that leg is shaking, you know, and then I'm driving through it with the gas, and I'm thinking, what, now it's like, we'll just let off the gas. It's an easy thing to say, but man, I was so nervous, and I was just stabbing at it. Well, actually the first course, I nosed in and got high centered and timed out. I didn't even make it through one set of gates. So the first course I completed was that downhill slab and then back up. I thought, man, this is great. I was so nervous. So third course, we had to go up on top of this huge boulder. So what do? We get Roger up there with the spotter strap. You remember the spotter straps?
Oh yeah, we still use them.
I know. But so we get Roger up there on a tow strap. He's pulling. He says, okay, come on up. So he starts running with the strap, and I go up, and I end up going over backwards, and it takes him and just slingshots him off that rock. So I'm upside down, and he ended up breaking his thumb or something. I mean, He was a mess. It was a big deal, but he really got flung. So now he's out, and so we bring my cousin Mark in, and we go into the next course, and there's a whole bunch of cones, just cones everywhere. It's ridiculous. And I go in, I knock over one, and he accidentally walks over three of them, and we're done. So that was our first day of rock crawling. But, as it worked out with the event, how screwed up it was, and they kept dropping courses, we ended up winning the event. And it was like, wow, this is great. And again, talking about money, we had to pay $400 and drive to Utah to do that event. We had a flatbed trailer. I remember we pulled off the interstate and slept on the trailer. And then we set up a tent right out at the event site. Tent blew away because of high winds and everything. But we had to pay $400, and now all of a sudden we won $1,200. And I'm thinking, I just made some money, there's a future in this. From there, we went on to the rest of the UROC series that year, and we won every event. We got second in Supercrawl, and it's like, man, and then that's when we started Lovell Racing, was that kind of that first season, because I'm thinking, man, we got a business going on here, and we're making money. And to me, it's such a special time and key time, because I can remember like being a kid and watching the Baja 1000 and thinking, oh, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, but it's not for me, because it was always about money. I don't have the money. And then it was like, how do these people go to these events with only 2 weeks of vacation if they're working jobs? How does this work? And I still don't know how it works. But
like you said, it's passion.
It's passion. And rock crawling, I really feel like we're in the right place at the right time. And it gave us a segue into racing. Why? Because it was grassroots, it was affordable, and there was prize money to be won. So you didn't have to show up with a pit crew, and you still don't, and it's why I love it. But it's just a great weekend thing to do. You can go out and challenge yourself, and there's some money to be won. And we took that money and took that drive and that passion and kept trying to build it. I can remember the very first sponsor I got. I was standing on my front porch, and I'm sure you know how it is, Rich, and dealing with a lot of rookie teams. They have big plans, right? And what I always tell them again today is, you got to do what you say first. And when you're done with that, you take that and you sell it to a sponsor, and then do it again. Because I can remember calling people and saying, yeah, I'm going to build a rock crawler and go rock crawling. And they're saying, yeah, sure you are, you and everybody else. But Tom at PSC was willing to work with us, PSC Power Steering. And he gave us a discount on some parts. But what it did is it allowed me to get the parts that I needed versus the parts I could afford. And that's where so many of these partnerships are so valuable, is just finding a way to be mutually beneficial. It's not about getting a check and running away with it. That's never going to happen. All those parts are earned, and the partnerships have to have an intrinsic value, But when I was standing on my front porch there talking to Tom, he gave me something I really needed, and I was so thankful, and it really worked out, and we had a great partnership for a lot of years. But that was kind of the motivation of, hey, now I'm an industry guy rather than just an enthusiast. And it's great. And it's that passion and desire and growth that has kind of helped it grow all these years. So, after that first season of rock crawling, we kept running U-Rock mainly because it was Utah events. And I remember they set up a super crawl right out in front of SEMA. I think that was the second year that we ran. And again, it was a disaster of an event. The course was pretty cool, but it was one of the first, I don't know if it was the first, but it was one of the first man-made courses, which was kind of a turning point in the sport, as you remember, I'm sure. But we went to Supercrawl there, and we didn't finish till 2 a.m, I think, but we won it. And that was a big deal. That was a really big deal for me because it was right before SEMA, so I could go into SEMA and talk to all these prospective sponsors and say, look, that vehicle out front, that's ours. We just won out here. And that was actually when we got involved with Ford a little bit at the time. And again, that was a huge deal for our team and a huge deal for the sport. One thing, I guess, that we always wanted to do, we never wanted to have a rock buggy. I always wanted to have a truck, not a buggy. So initially, we took the sheet metal from my 88 Ranger, we cut it all up, fit it real nicely to the chassis, and then it was that time at SEMA with Ford where we came up with an agreement. It wasn't much, but hey, they're willing to endorse our team, and they're willing to send us some sheet metal and some parts so we can kind of make that thing look more like a newer Ranger. And I can't tell you how many hours I put into making that body. I did it in a little shed in the back of our old house with no heat, but I learned how to do fiberglass molds and went through so much with that, and modifying the grill and shrinking everything down. I remember I did the front fenders, and when you're doing fiberglass, you can't just do one side and mirror it for the other side. It's artwork. You have to do both sides. And I had all this work into it, and I made the plugs. So then you pour the mold onto that, and then you release it and you use the mold to make your part. Well, they stuck together. So the whole project was junk, and throw it out, come back and do it again. Again, it takes everything you have, whether it's all your passion and time and money. It's those things that add up. And for me, a lot of that time, and very much still, it's time and passion. And not to talk bad about people that kind of come in with a bunch of money and pay for it. It's whatever you're doing to get you there. It's that desire to go out and win and be number one. Anyhow, the first Ranger that we built, it was built off of a frame because the rules at the time, the modified class, back to the fact we didn't want a rock buggy, we wanted a truck. So modified class, that's where we wanted to be. And the rules at the time required a frame, and those rules still cause a lot of my disdain for limited class rules these days, because here's a great idea. Hey, truck has to have a frame. Let's base it on that. But there are so many different ways you can read that frame or that rule. I remember the guys from Twisted Customs, they angled their frame rails in. Great idea, right? But they used aftermarket frame rails. And here I had just worked months and months and months on mine. I come out with more traditional setup, and it's like, oh, come on, But and nobody's cheating. They're just interpreting the rules differently. So to that end, where the King of the Hammers rules are right now with the Legends class, like front engine, 2 seats, single shock per corner, solid axle, those are all black and white. And I like those rules because it's just black and white, and there's no way to screw stuff up. But in any case, that car was getting dated because of that frame technology. The frame was getting bent. So we built our second car in 2007, 2008, I think. And that's right when obviously the economy wasn't looking so great. But maybe it's 2006, which is somewhere in that time frame, right? I guess it'd have to be 2006 is when we put together our current Ranger. We did it there's the first non-event King of the Hammers, the OG 13, so we didn't go to that one, but that was right after we had been completing it, and we thought, well, we definitely want it to be a rock crawler, and we're gonna have it so we can adapt it a little bit for that event. So I remember I had a 5-gallon backpack style fuel cell that just went behind my driver's seat. You could turn around and see the whole rear suspension, visibility lines everywhere out of that car. So much of it was built around visibility. And we had a clear door on the passenger side, which I'm sure a lot of guys still do. All that's worth so much. And then we'd kind of take some of those things off and put in a radio and put in a different fuel cell and go give King of the Hammers a shot. We had a lot of domination looking back in the early days of rock crawling with We Rock. Also, I remember running the Grand Nationals down there and winning in Farmington. I mean, all those were such special moments. And every time we'd go do well, we'd get a podium finish, we'd win an event. I'm thinking, man, this is great. We'd get some media, we'd get, some prize money. But I was scared to death all those years. What's going to happen when we don't get podium? What's going to happen when there's not much of a story out of one of these events? So I kept working that whole time to bolster our position. And what worked for us for a lot of years is I'd write a story every event. I'd write a story, and we'd have some pictures, and I'd send that out to a whole list of media contacts and our sponsors. And they wouldn't always pick it up, but a lot of times magazines would just, they have an article in the can written for them. So why not publish it? And here's some pictures to go with it. And it really worked well for us and got us a lot of notoriety. So along that time also, the thing, like it or not, you always have to talk about is money. And how do you keep going? And how do you keep funding this? Because at a certain point, it goes from doing, maybe 4 events a year that you can do on vacation time and kind of cover the costs to something more serious. And I ultimately wanted something more serious. So is 3 years in or so, I guess it was around 2006, I was working as an engineer for the city, actually as a project manager at that time. I didn't have any expectations of me at work. All I wanted to do was surf pirate and go rock crawling. I remember I'd sit there at work and read pirate and learn and scroll through all that stuff and see all this free technology. And eventually it came to the point that now I'm married to Natalie, and she's pregnant with our boys, Adam and Byam, twins. It was the day they were born that I quit my job. And that was a big deal, because here I am, I'm going to be a professional rock crawler, right?
That's full commitment right there.
Yeah, I know.
Twins, married,
yeah.
house, racing, and a regular job. Bye, regular job.
Yeah, well, exactly. At least I had that realization, right, Rich, that I can't go racing, have kids, and have a job. But I gave up my job. I gave up my engineering career, and that's one thing where, Roger has stuck with his engineering career, and he kind of comes in and helps with Lovell racing and goes to some of the races. But, day to day, I'm dealing with Lovell racing, and then I don't know, I fancy myself an engineer here or there, but it was, again, a big turning point in my life. And it was the best of times and the worst of times. I mean, there were highs and lows, and especially during the economic crunch we had picked up. Before that, we had Alloy USA was our first cash sponsor, and a huge debt of gratitude to Ron Stovall for helping us out. And that kind of enticed FabTech to get involved. And now when FabTech got involved, there were actually some expectations and some funding. It wasn't, and it'll never be us getting rich, because going back to the fact takes everything you have, every dollar, every amount of time. So what I tell everybody is, the more money you give me, the more I'm going to spend being fast, doing racing, whatever. But FabTech got involved, and man, it was great. And I remember going out to Moab with those guys and doing events, and it's just, everything was flourishing. Rick Hoosman was one of my teammates, and the Hoosmans kind of got involved and helped our team out. And then the economy collapsed. Alloy USA went bankrupt. FabTech went bankrupt, and they emerged from it. And I got to give them credit for that. We were left holding the bag. We didn't, we payments due and nowhere to go.
Based on expectations.
Right.
Right.
And it was, we got a mortgage payment, got a family. Natalie got laid off of her job, and it was a little scary, and I remember it was August, and we figured, well, we can go here. I don't know. It's one of these crazy decisions again, but we can go live on the road as cheap as we can, live at home. So we took my mom's pop-up and drove up to Canada, and we drove slow to save gas, and we stayed roadside campgrounds. And, looking back, was it a scary time? Yeah. But, did we have a lot of great adventures as a family? Yes, we did. And things got better. AMSOIL during this whole time kept upping their sponsorship with us. And I got involved with Torchmate at the time. And between Torchmate and AMSOIL, we were able to salvage the next season and go racing again. But that was definitely a point where it could have ended. And a local sponsor of ours, Fred Robinson, put me to work as a construction foreman. So I spent a few months managing a construction project. Everything since then has kind of kept ticking up, and we knew COVID was going to come up, right? And we'll see where we come out of this. I guess one thing that 2008 taught me is that you can go through these hard times and still come out on the other side. Ron Stobaugh, being involved with our team, always challenged us to get out and do more. And while we're great at rock crawling, let's go see what else you're great at, and don't stagnate. And he really drove that into us. And he offered us our first opportunity down in Baja, which I will never forget.
He's done that with a lot of guys.
Yeah, I know.
It's awesome. Stovall's name keeps coming up, and he was one of my first marketing partners as well.
Well, he's such a passionate, visionary type, and he's done so much for the sport behind the scenes. And I think it was 2006 was my first time down in Baja, and Eric Falar was running a Jeep Speed. It was a peninsula run, and here I am. I was still working at that time, so I have my little chunk of time. I'm going to go to Baja. And it's like, okay, Ron, I can go down there for 3 days, but then I have to fly home. Okay, whatever. So I didn't have a helmet. I went down there, and I was going to ride with Eric, and they put me in for the first section because I had to go home. I couldn't go down the peninsula. I remember I got in, and I was so scared of traps and everything. They redirected us the wrong way off the start. We got that fixed. We got stuck in a silt bed. I said, Eric, should I get out and, work this out? And he's like, just hang out in the car for now. And right then, another Jeep Speed clipped the back of us and shot off to the side and rolled down in the bushes. And then this guy emerges with a bandana on. He said, I'm going to get you out of here. And I just remember thinking, oh, my God, this is the real deal, So we got towed out of there. I had my tulip notes and my sunglasses in my hands. They were just, destroyed within 50 miles. We had to stop. We had fuel cell foam falling apart. So I can remember a Mexican, shoulder deep in the fuel cell pulling the foam out for us. And we busted a shock off. So it was dark by the time we got over on San Felipe, which is where I was supposed to go out. And I remember, we're going to stop at BFG pits. And well, this should all be preceded by the fact that GPS was set up and it had the hazards, but it didn't have the course line. So, and I didn't know how to run a GPS. So there's no course line. We're wandering around, and we see this semi way off on the left, I remember, on old Portocitos Road before they paved it down there. And I remember going by thinking, oh, that's LeDuc's pit. Crap, he has a big semi. This is crazy. Can't wait till we find BFG pit. So we keep going down into the darkness. And Eric says, I'm pretty sure we should have found it by now. It was like, I didn't see any BFG pit, but, I wonder if it's LeDuc's trailer back there. So we turn around and we go wrong way on course, Rich, and we go back to the pit. And they worked on the car there for a while, and that's where I was kicked out. Next thing I know, I got to meet this guy, Baja Dan, to get my ride back north up to Phoenix. And that's a whole nother story, but it took a couple days. And it took me to Phoenix to figure out who won the race, because information obviously wasn't flowing then like it does now. And that was the same year that race ended. Tracy Jordan was racing with Wide Open that year. Kenny and Tracy went off a cliff, and that was a bad deal. And Eric was the next car on scene, and he ended up stopping and waiting with those guys, which was probably the choice. And
Yes.
So that's where our race ended in Loretto. But that was my first exposure to Baja, and I've been doing whatever I can to go back ever since. I love it down there. But our career, you know, we kept on with rock crawling for years and years and years. And as things changed, we focused a little bit more on King of the Hammers. And then in 2010, as my sponsorship kept growing with AMSOIL, I wanted to go short course racing. That was kind of the next thing. Initially, it was rock crawling. And it's not that my love for rock crawling has ever receded, but it's like, wow, here's the next coolest, brightest thing. So I remember we flew into Vegas and went to Prim, Natalie and Roger and I. We showed up at the event, and I heard the trucks practicing. It was like, wow, this is for me. So I run right up to the fence on the outside of turn 3 and put my nose up to the wire. Here comes a truck, wow, I'm singing around. I'm like, yeah. And then I got roosted. Crack, 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 crack. So those are the lessons you learn along the way, right? But we watched that race. And, you know, I was convinced, you know, I got the money. I can, you know, if I scrape together and work hard enough, I can get a ProLite. And that's when ProLites were running 4 cylinders and carbon clutches and everything. And they were ticking time bombs. And it was intimidating, walking around the pits, talking to a bunch of people, trying to figure it out. We were watching, and Rick Hoosman was running his Pro 4, coming across the whoops on the infield. And the video's on YouTube. But he hit the whoop wrong and does a double flip in the air, lands right on his tires, and rolls off the course. And I saw that, and it's like, yep, I think I need to wait a couple years before I get involved in short course. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And because I couldn't see what he had done wrong. That's what bugged me the most about it. And I remember I went and talked to him the next day, and he's like, yeah, you know, I've bent the truck a little bit, but it's all right. And it's just like, no, this is too much. So it took 3-4 years, but in 2010, we had an opportunity with AMSOIL to get involved, you know, and it was kind of like, here's enough money to go hang yourself. I remember I drove from Colorado to Crandon for a single test day and then drove back again. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. I jumped in my ProLite, and I'm out there spinning around and running it just as hard as I can, and I come out of the back hairpin and up into turn 1, and there's a couple guys staying in the course. I'm figuring, what the hell is this, you know? So I stopped, and it was Jeremy McGrath and Johnny Greaves, and they pretty much told me, look, man, you got to slow it down, get it under control, think about more of the rhythm. You're trying too hard. And Rich, it's tough, man. It's a tough deal, and short course will break your heart. But so that was that single day I had out there. So I came all the way back to Colorado, finished the truck, go all the way back out to Crandon, and my very first race. And I got something to prove, right? Because I'm the new guy, and go through turn 1, right into turn 2, and I clip a guy. It wasn't even a hard clip. You know, I rock crawl. You slam into stuff. You roll your car. And here I just hit him, and it broke the front tie rod, and my race was over. I felt like the world fell apart, you know, because I had so much I felt like I needed to prove. And that first season of short course, it was rough. It was rough. And I remember people telling me it's going to be rough. And maybe I didn't believe him. And finally, Marty Hart, another old-time rock crawler, his advice to me was make sure you get every lap of every race so you get that experience. And that's finally what I focused on. I was so worried that AMSOIL was going to cancel our sponsorship, and I was fortunate enough, got a second season in it. We started doing better. And then I remember the first race I won. I'll never forget it in Redbud. But it's like, finally, and what we've done, we changed the rear spring rate in the car to make it a little bit softer. And finally, the thing felt balanced. I could carry it through a turn. I didn't have to fight it and muscle it the whole way. And then the following season, we won a championship. Then I felt like, man, I've made it. I've really made it. And I'm envisioning, my future with, huge shops and all kinds of trucks and money. And nope, not much changed the next year. In fact, we raced with Nissan that year, and Nissan did a lot for us at the time. Ron Stukenberg was a great coach and great mentor, but we won the championship and Nissan pulled out of racing. It's like, come on, what are you doing,
Timing is everything.
The point is, there's a lot of ups and downs. I think there are highs and lows in racing, and you've got to do what you got to do to even those out, because you get too hung up on the highs and you're going to lose yourself. And that's where a lot of people have flamed out, because they overexpend, or they try to grow too fast, or just get ahead of themselves. Or, you get hung up in one of the lows and it's just not fun anymore, so you quit. And really worked over the years to even those out. But so, spent a lot of years in short course, raced ProLite for 5-6 years, raced Pro 2 for 3 years. And, Pro 2, one of the things I remember about that, we won some races, we had some good times, but again, those are ticking time bombs. And, you got a $60,000 engine that's running on the ragged edge, and we blew a couple of them up, and it stops being fun real quick. Again, being overextended, it was not fun being overextended. And we kind of got to that point in Pro 2 before the engine rule changes. And up until that point in my life, it's like I always knew, man, I'm going to have a trophy truck someday. I want a trophy truck. And Pro 2 kind of taught me, I don't want a trophy truck. I really don't find too many things that are fun about race engines. They they take all your money and all your fun and break it and end up in the oil pan.
Exactly. The guys are learning that with Ultra 4.
Yep.
Or have been learning it. There's a lot of guys that came out there that had money to spend, and
yep.
Going through 4 or 5 engines in a year,
yep.
It just devastated them. They sell their car and they never go back to racing.
There's that old Ivan Stewart video game with the 3 wheels on it, and you go win a race, and it's like, what do you want to spend your money on? Engine, shocks, top speed, tires. And there's so much truth to that game. And the problem with race engines and high dollar overbuilt engines is they take all that money and flush it out of the system, because it's just broken parts. I still have race engines and I still love the way they sound, but man, the point is, a lot of guys can afford $60,000, $100,000 race engines. I'm not one of them. They hurt when they break, and it takes fun and it takes money out of racing. So, and to the point of King of the Hammers, what do you need in King of the Hammers? You need a car that's going to survive that race. You don't
Correct.
need to hit the top speed on the lake bed, And some of the other short course races they're doing, you do need to hit the top speed. You do need the big engine. We've always erred on the side of conservative in King of the Hammers. And even I think a lot of that, Rich, it actually came from rock crawling. You have to be so strategic. Are you going to take the bonus line? Are you going to do a spotter ride? Are you going to take a back? And it's a chess match. It's a puzzle you have to figure out.
A lot of guys that we see don't figure that out, or they talk to their friends before that are competing in the rock crawls. They're like, okay, I'm gonna try this because I'm a great crawler. I go out and I bust all these big trails. I'm the greatest driver in the world. And then they come out there and they have to drive our lines through our cones the way we want it done. And rock crawling sure changes with cones in a crowd.
Yes,
it does. Pressure. You got pressure. You got, strategies. I always feel for the guys that jump straight into the pro classes instead of coming up through sportsmen, because they don't get to learn the strategy. And I always tell them, come any new competitor, come over and watch the judge's video so that you understand what the judges are looking for so that you can try to avoid those things. And people still to this day don't do it. The ones that succeed the fastest have either judged or have at least watched the video and then gotten involved. It's so technical.
I think so much of it, Rich, is, and I've been one of them, but you come out there with a chip on your shoulder, like, man, I'm the best, you know? You got an ego. We're all type A people.
Yes.
And I think, you know, as I've matured in my racing career, I've tried to let some of that go, but I'm still watching my neighbor. I'm not, you know, you're always watching the guy next to you, you know, whether it's a chrome trophy truck or a matching helicopter or what, you know, all that still matters a little bit, but it all waters down. You know, it's like that first rock crawl I went to. I knew I was the best. And in the first short course race out in Crandon, I knew I was the best. I just had to prove it. And it can be heartbreaking and gut wrenching, but that's what racing is. And I think it breaks you, or you have to be able to laugh at your own faults over time to be able to digest it, right? Because nobody can win them all. But
correct.
But you know, motorsports is definitely humbling.
It is, because you can be at the very top one day and be at the very bottom the next day.
Yep.
You know, and it can be something so simple. Look at these guys that are racing, you know, and I go back to the racing aspect of it instead of the crawling, because typically crawling's not as damaging to a vehicle nowadays. We had a period there where, you know, things got a little out of control.
Rigs. Yeah.
Well, you know, there was talked about it with another interview I did with Lance Clifford, is when John Nelson and John Bondurant built that tiny rig. John Nelson calls me up and says, "Hey, Rich, you need to allow everybody to put water in their tires. Water is free." And I'm like, that's not a good enough argument, because it's not free. Because once you load your tires, that chromoly axle is not going to last. That everything's going to have to become 300M, you know, and then everything's going to be more expensive. And he looked at me, and, you know, we're on the phone, but, you know, he turns around and says, "Really? Because I'm the only one that can afford $15,000 worth of tungsten, and I'm going to weld it to my rims then." Water's free.
Right.
You know, I went, "Damn you, Nelson."
Right. But, and that's the nature of racing. You can't get away from the dollar escalation.
Correct.
And it's tough. I mean, I can remember Rob McCachran, you know, I look up a lot to Rob, because to me, he's the best, and he's a pro, and he's made a living at it. You know, in my eyes, he's the greatest off-road racer. And I was talking to him about the dollar figures back in the short course days. And he said, "You know what, Brad?" He said, "Racing costs a lot of money. Get over it." It's like, but Rob, it's just get over it. You know, you gotta let it go, and you gotta find the right level that you can participate and have fun. And hey, if it's not running trophy trucks in the Baja 1000, get over it. You know, there's so much fun to be had between, you know, the county fair and running trophy trucks in the Baja. I mean, there's a whole world of off-road motorsports out there that, you know, obviously we can't wait to get back to. So to that end, to kind of complete our story of all these years, you know, AMSO's involvement in short course kind of folded up. Since we've done so many different things with rock crawling and King of the Hammers, desert racing and our Bronco and everything, that they were willing to extend our sponsorship to give Spec Trophy Truck a shot. And so that's kind of been our focus now, or where we're throwing away the most money. And it's pretty amazing, Rich. It's a whole different experience, and it's hard for me because it doesn't take the same skill set that rock crawling does. And it doesn't take that technical nature that I kind of grew into and found a lot of success at. There are some spots where it's really technical and you got to get the truck through there, but learning the scale of the truck, the weight of the truck, how the pace, what you can run, it's something else, man. And a lot of it is just smashing through stuff that there shouldn't be a way that you can do that. It blows my mind, the pace that you have to keep and the level of risk you have to take in dust, over blind rises. A lot of these people driving these trucks are daredevils, and where I look at my skill set is, being more strategic. So I think more difficult races like down in Baja kind of favor us more than some of the best in the desert races. These guys run like, the pace that Jason Voss is keeping out there. He knows these courses year over year, but holy cow. I mean, it's hauling ass, and it's doing it all day long. So but what I appreciate about it is, coming into rock crawling, coming into short course, into King of the Hammers, into desert, there's always something that needs to be learned. And then, as you master it, you're either winning, which is great, but as soon as you win, now if you don't win the next year, it's a letdown, and you perfect your craft, and you get irritated by little mistakes you make. And what I really enjoy about running this spec trophy truck is the learning curve, because it's like, hey, I'm giving myself the liberty to make some mistakes. I crashed it into a tree and rolled it. It's the scariest thing I ever did. But it's going through that learning process that I really appreciate, without having that really high bar and knowing that, man, if we didn't get a podium or something, we should be hanging our heads. No, it's very competitive out there, and there's a lot of learning, and I'm excited to do it. And we're making headway. We had a podium finish last year, almost got on the podium in the Mint this year. It's all these little things. It's, in the Mint, we could have been second, maybe second or third, and we hit a rock. And then so we stop, and then the air jack wouldn't work, and one of the spare tires had fallen off. So the tire change took us forever. And that, that's from, now we're down in fourth place. And it's just those little things. If I hadn't hit the rock, would have been fine.
Yep. What if? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, you mentioned partners earlier. A lot of people call them sponsors. I don't like the term sponsor. It cheapens what it really is about. It's partnerships, and what you as a racer, a lot of guys don't understand this. And I think this is where you've been able to take those long relationships with one of your partners. And I like to call them marketing partners, because it is a partnership, just like a marriage, just like a business partnership with somebody. It takes all effort from everybody to make it work, not just give me parts, give me some money, and then, you walk away, because you got to give them something in return.
Exactly. It's a job, and it's a hard job. And I think that's why, it's the same point you're bringing up. I think it's why maybe a lot of them fail, is because people think that, hey, just because I'm doing this, I can get a sponsor, and they find a way to get a sponsor, but then they can't maintain it. And it takes that maintenance. It's, what I was talking about in the early days of rock crawling, when I was scared to death when we didn't get on the podium and do well to represent our sponsors. Are they going to dump us? So I kept backing up everything we did with work, with writing articles, taking pictures, giving them to media outlets. And that's been an evolving process. Now it's all social media. Is Luke Johnson, who told me a couple of years ago, flabbergasted me. He said, well, winning isn't fashionable anymore. It's how many social media followers you have. And it's like, holy cow, and it's definitely changed the racing world, social media. But you do have to constantly work for your sponsors and treat it like a job, and show them. For us, it's showing them that we're reinvesting, that we're staying relevant, that we're working hard, that we're finding ways to market our team. And a lot of it too, I think, Rich, is just having shared values and a shared image and a quality representation. And we've been very fortunate. All our career, we've been sponsored by BFG, and something that we've always been very proud of. AMSOIL. People ask me, well, how'd you get AMSOIL to sponsor you? Well, back in 2004 or 5, I wrote them a proposal. And I sent out proposals with, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's the marketing we're getting. 19 out of 20 of those, they go in the trash can. But Amsoil gave me a call and said, yeah, well, basically we're interested. And again, I'm thinking, oh, I'm rich, I'm getting money, everything's going to change. Nope, they sent me some product. It's been an earned relationship. Product and then more product and a little bit of cash. And then that's grown, but we've grown together. It's the reason why we're here. And I don't think we should ever forget that.
True. Now, you said something about the desert racing, and going over the blind hills and, how everybody fearless or just whatever. Let's talk about something that I think is really dangerous that you've done, and that's Pike's Peak.
Yeah. Well, so, and I got a great view of it right out my window right here.
Yeah.
And I was actually spotted the road the other day. It's still snowy up there. Pike's Peak is, I can remember telling my mom when we got involved with rock crawling, she said, oh, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. And I remember saying, Mom, it's not like we're racing Pike's Peak. And then I think it's 2008, it was 2010. I built that ProLite, and it's the whole rock crawling nature, Rich. It's the people that we're cut from, right? I was building the ProLite and I was thinking, I have a race car now. I bet I can race that on Pike's Peak. So sure enough, I call them up, and it's like, well, you can run in the open class, I guess. Yeah, right on. So I remember I came back from Crandon, and it's like Pike's Peak is like hell week because you have to get up at 2 a.m. and we deadheaded home from Crandon and barely had time to clean the mud off. And I think the first practice day we just ran on mud tires, and then we changed to some more streetable tires, I guess, because it was still gravel and pavement at the time. But I worked so hard that year. And honestly, that first year it was like, I'm going to make it to the top. I'm not going to die doing this. And sure enough, made it up in I think it was, I don't know, high 12s, 1258 or something like that, which is still kind of hauling ass for that mountain. There are some turns that have been made famous, but
for a reason.
So the next year, it's like, hey, we're getting more serious about this. So I bought a alcohol carb from Leonard Vaschultz here, his local, and alcohol burns a lot cleaner up there. So now we're running home from Crandon, changing tires, changing wheels, changing carb, changing fuel, and so it just made it harder. But man, it was pretty fun. And I think that year was the year that JT and Dave Cole and Kevin Yoder and a bunch of the rock crawling guys came out, and my brother Roger ran. And God, I had this damn bet with JT. He was thinking he could out-qualify me. And shut up, JT. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, they qualify in the lower section, which was still gravel. And I'd been burning my tires up on the upper section, hauling ass on the pavement. So he qualified. I go down there the next day, and I had slicks, more or less. And Rich, it was the scariest thing. Oh my God, the car was so loose on that gravel. I thought I was going to die. So I slowed it down, and then I still thought I was going to die. So I was lucky just to keep it on the road, and JT out-qualified me, and he's never going to let that go. But so anyway, yeah, my brother took off 2 cars in front of me, and you're staged waiting to go, and there's a big hole up in line, and it's like, what's going on? And he had gotten loose in one of the turns down low in the trees and clipped some shotcrete that they had used in the ditches and sent him tumbling right down the center of the road. And that ended up totaling his car. It was a pretty scary deal. So, there's some times in a race car where you just have to stay focused and kind of nut up and do what you have to do. And that was a hard one for me, but, made it to the top, and I did it in 12:15. So I bettered my time by quite a bit. And then you sit up at the top all day at 14,000 feet. You have no way to come down. Cell phone didn't work up there. So we had a little intermittent radio contact, and I heard that my brother was okay, but it was a long day sitting up there. I won't forget it. And then, so that was the end of my Pikes Peak career. We were all set up, ready to go the following year, and we had fires out here, and it moved the race to a new weekend that has forever been on top of Crandon. So, and now the race, it's totally changed. There's supercars out here and Porsches, and these guys run bottled oxygen now to make sure they're keeping their mind straight. And it's changed a lot since we're slinging gravel and staying wide on the turns, and that's okay. It's got a future, but it's not one that's including me.
Understood. Yeah, it's changed a lot when they brought in all those rally car guys and the Formula One drivers and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I mean, these guys, most of those guys, when they're factory sponsored like that, I don't think they ever work on the cars.
Yeah,
they may sit there and look and see what guys are doing, and they may understand it, but it's a totally different game.
It absolutely is. And Volkswagen spent $20 million or something, $20 million to develop and build an electric car to run up there. And they've killed it. They did great. And it's a big event in Europe, actually. To a lot of European drivers come over and run it. And there are years, like when Volkswagen was here, that's a big year. But they're kind of, one and done. And so this past year, it's kind of a little bit of a dud because there weren't any real big names there. And that's it's something we deal with, I think, more and more in motorsports is cherry picking. And, maybe it's whether it's an OEM or a huge team coming in, like Peugeot came in with Loeb one year and just destroyed the record up here. But, they come, they do their goal, and then they leave. And it's hard to say whether that helps the sport. And I think it's something we're dealing with series of races across all of off-road, is people will come in and cherry pick the one big event and then go run another big single event and not support the whole series. And it's hard. And we've done it both ways. We've cherry picked and we've run the series, and I don't know what to say, but it's gonna be a future challenge, I think.
Yeah, it is. We've always looked at it with the rock crawling and then with the dirt riot racing that we did, is to put our nationals had to be our biggest events, those national finals. We protected them. You had to have at least competed with us in the past, or to win the title. You could come out and win, come out and run the event, but you weren't going to be called that national champion. So we always tried to tie it in to protect the integrity of that. But it's a small enough sport you can do that. I'm not, if somebody, some manufacturer came in and was going to throw millions of dollars at it, I'd probably be going, okay, well, let's see what we can do to change that for you.
Right.
I mean, to be honest,
it's a tough balance, and I don't know that there is a right answer, Rich, but it's tough. And ultimately you've got to support those who are supporting you, whether they're competitors or sponsors. And I'll tell you, I have never, ever envied a promoter, because it looks like the most thankless, difficult job. And, you always end up being the centerpiece. If it rains, what are you going to do? Go bitch at the promoter. If there's a virus, go bitch at the promoter.
Exactly. So the one thing, you get into that, the one thing that I've always tried to do, and it's probably hindered me from taking rock crawling, being more of a grassroots sport and making it, some huge event, is I've always wanted to keep it real. And keeping it real was making sure that the drivers were always treated the same, that the marketing partners were all treated the same, and never favored anybody over anybody else, try to keep it as level of playing field. With racers always want whatever their newest idea is, or whatever they are doing, to be the new rule, or what they think it should be. if somebody's really great at rear steer, you got to get rid of rear steer penalties.
Right.
If it's hey, my car outperforms everybody else. If you do this, I can drop down a class, and
Right.
then I can dominate. It's always been about with us what's best for the entire sport or everything that we're doing, not for the individual. And
Well,
it's really hard for people to understand that until they get on this side of the
right.
banner.
But I think, it's an ethical question. And my solution is you have to find the best ethical answer, because if you're willing to violate that, then you're on a slippery slope that's going to end up at the bottom and fail. And I think it's ultimately important to do what you're saying. Watch out for the integrity of the sport, the integrity of your team or your organization. It's something that we've always tried to do. I'm sure that there's somebody I've used up in a turn and messed up or something, but I've never been wanted to be labeled a cheater or somebody who's a dirty driver or something. I mean, my kids watch me race, and I want to finish the race and feel good about what I've done. That said, I'm sure I've nerfed people a little bit too hard, but I feel bad about it.
So have you ever sent a I'm sorry letter or an email or anything like that?
There are some people on the unsarry list, or like I've seen on the internet, some people, if I knew I had COVID, that I'd go visit, But yeah, it's tough. There are some things. I remember the Baja 1000 one year. I was running with BFG, and this guy Brian Finch, he's a great friend of mine now, and it was maybe the first year that we had run together. And he's a pavement racer, and things are a little bit different in pavement. We were going down this high-speed road coming out to the K77 access on the cutover road to San Felipe there. It's pretty early in the race. Running in the dust of this buggy, just running in the dust. Man, I couldn't get by him, and I'm frustrated, high-speed road. And there was this terrible hazard. There's a cattle guard or something out there, I think a post in the middle of the road. And I believe it was Pat Sims. Hit that thing, whack, he rolled, and his truck is there. So the car slowed down for the accident, which is, of course, what you got to do. And in that meantime, I'm slowing down. I'm being reasonable, too. And I gather him up. I'm right behind him. So before he could get back on the gas, whap, I hit him and knock him off into the bushes and get by him. And my poor co-driver, Brian Finch, he's still offended by that, because he's thinking I just totally used up the guy. And I guess maybe I did, but man, what happens? You have free air, and now you can run. So you got to be willing to do that sometimes, I think.
That's another thing that I try to stress at our drivers meetings with our racing. And it even went back to in the VORA days, the Valley Off-Road Racing days, in the early to mid 2000s, was at those drivers meetings is talk about etiquette when you're on course, especially desert racing or the ultra force style racing, the short, ours was more short course stuff, but not true short course. And it's like, if somebody's caught you and you're on timed, your time starts, that means he's faster.
Right.
So that's not the time to block or to learn to try to be fast. Let the guy by. And it's hard for people to do that.
So I'm a big believer in desert karma, I call it. But if you do, I really do think if you do good things for people, good things will happen to you more often than not. And Rich, I believe what you're saying. And that's the way we've always raced King of the Hammers. It's like, if you want to pass us, go for it. Knock yourself out, More often than not, you find the guy later down the course broken. But and this is where I tell you that things are different. Like, so the Mint this year, we're running, and we qualified third in spec trophy truck. We've got a whole bunch of trucks behind us. I blew a turn coming into the pit. Right when I'm coming into the pit, truck's nerfing us just lightly from behind. this householder, pretty aggressive dude. And I'm thinking, you know what? Just let him go. Because like what you're saying, we're in the pit, we're 25 miles an hour. I'm just going to let him go, let him wad it up. It's his race. Because anymore, I like to focus on it's me versus the desert. And the other vehicles are the byproduct, right? I can't control them. I'm going to worry about me versus the desert. And Rich, I let him go. And what happened? There's another truck right on his bumper. So now I got to let that guy go too. So now I dropped 2 spots down to 5th. Well, Householder ended up winning the race. We caught the other guy. But I regret doing that because he still has to earn his position in front of me. And if he can beat me in the pits by driving 25 and I'm going 24, then it's his. But so yes, I agree with you from an ethical standpoint, but they also have to earn it, you know? And
yeah, I get it. There's a fine line.
And it depends on the circumstances, apparently. But again, talking about lessons learned, I'm still learning lessons, you know?
Right. I remember one time out here in Texas, we're sheltering in place here in Texas. We were racing out here and I could hear Levi Shirley on his siren from shortly after he came through the pits. And I can hear him for like 8 miles on the course because of the way this Canyons off-road park was. And he's trying to get around another team. And I can hear the siren going the whole way. Well, the other team, as they come into the start-finish line and then the hot pits are after that, you know, I'm pointing to him to pull over. He starts to pull over. Levi starts to go around him as they're going in the pits, but he's pulling over to allow him to go by. No passing in the pit lane, right? So he starts to go around him. He cuts back almost, and then so Levi, so they didn't lock up tire to tire, because you know what happens with 4,400 cars when you do that. He goes wide and hits the throttle, goes over the speed limit to get so they don't collide, and then the guy turns off. Next time around, I black flagged Levi and said, we had our little discussion about passing the way he passed in the pits. And then, but you know, I know he was frustrated because for 8 miles, he followed that guy all the way around the course. Right. And then when that guy came in, I black flagged him and explained to him what he had done wrong to create Levi to do something wrong. And, you know, it's one of those things that as a promoter, you need to deal with those instances. And it's a lot easier when the course is only 8 miles long. You know, Vegas to Reno, you know, what happens out there?
Well,
you know, you don't have the chance, or even a 50-mile loop. It's tough. You know, so nobody's there to watch.
The thing is, Rich, a few years ago, there's some local go-kart racing going on out here. And I figured, you know what? I want to get my kids involved with racing. So let's do some go-kart racing. And they're, you know, they watch dad run short course and everything. And it's aggressive. And go-karts, those guys are latte sipping, sitting in the clubhouse, watching somebody else work on their car, snotty people, quite frankly. And, you know, Byam's out there, he was running great. And he's aggressive, and there's some car contact. So the steward came and talked to me, and it's like, hey, we got to tighten this up. He's right. It's a different form of racing, and it's not bumper cars, so let's tighten it up. During the race, there was like a little incidental contact, and hey, it's hard. You know, what am I, a hockey dad? I don't know, but it's hard to see something like that happen. And he kicked my son out of the race. It's like, you're done, you're gone. There's no penalty, there's no nothing. And I remember feeling so frustrated about it, because if you don't, you know, where are you supposed to learn unless it's in the beginning classes of go-kart racing? Or, you know, with Dirt Riot, the amateur classes of off-road racing. That's where we do have to learn. And I value so much Dirt Riot, and I loved racing it, because that's where these people can go learn these lessons, where maybe there's a less of an impact financially, or, you know, just investment wise, to travel 3 states over to go to an Ultra 4 race or something. And we need those venues.
True. But you got to have, you know, the promoter of those kind of races needs to also understand that's their place.
Yeah.
You know, so many
Right.
promoters out there
Yep.
want to be NASCAR. You
Yep.
know, they want to be Formula One, they want to be IndyCar, whatever the, you know, wherever the top is in
Yep.
their group. It's always good to have competition as a promoter, but you got to know where you're at, when to make that move if you're going to try to be bigger and better and all that. I think that's
Well,
one reason you see so many people get in and out of the promotion end of racing, is because it's difficult at times to not throw everything you have behind it, and then and know when to. It's almost like racing strategy or building a race
Yep.
car. You know, there's
well,
a
I
lot
was
of
thinking,
a lot of things involved.
I was thinking about it earlier today, Rich, because I think, you know, looking back at rock crawling and who we were, we wanted so much. We wanted nothing more than to be recognized by the whole off-road industry and to make it bigger than desert racing and to be NASCAR. And we thought we were going to be NASCAR. And there are still, it's kind of like a brotherhood, all those people, because a few of them are still around actively in racing. A few of them are doing associated things, but you know, they're a lot of the best friends I have. And we fought so hard. I remember calling suppliers, hey, I need this part. Well, what are you using it for? Oh, I'm using a rock crawl. Oh, that's the wrong part. And it's like, you don't even know what I'm doing, man, you know? And now that's totally changed, but we fought so hard for recognition. And were we wrong to do it, Rich? I don't know. But what it led to was man-made courses and doing it in front of SEMA and all this stuff that was not sustainable and wasn't reflective of what rock crawling really is. And that's where I think it's great now where it is, because it's a hell of a lot of fun and you can be competitive doing it and it's affordable and I love what you're doing with it. It was not sustainable where it was. It kind of grew up and collapsed. It's funny, I haven't seen Ranch Pratt in 10 years, I bet. And I ran into him at the Mint and we had a brief conversation. And I think he kind of sees it the same way. I mean, stuff just got to the point where it wasn't sustainable and it wasn't reflective of the base that was supporting it. So, but there was so much battle for recognition. And I think that has overflowed into King of the Hammers and wanting that recognition. And you know what? Just this weekend, we're on ABC, you know, the wide world of sports has turned into X Games, whatever it is, live. That's cool. It's cool. It is. There's, again, so many things from watching yourself on ABC. That's awesome. But from there down to just being the weekend rock crawler, there's so much fun to be had in that realm. Again, I always encourage people, don't get too big for your britches. Just start somewhere that it's fun and progress and enjoy the journey.
And try to keep it fun, because if it's no longer fun, then it becomes very difficult to continue to do.
Yep.
You know, and that's one of the things with us, is I've always tried to keep it fun for us, for the teams. You know, we try to build that camaraderie. There's people that really enjoy that, and then there's others that are, you know, they're still A-type personalities, but they're more of a recluse and don't want to join in with the rest of the group. But
Right.
that's and it's understandable. I mean, that's life.
Right.
But we try to make it that way. But as I get older, it's a lot harder to make those Friday and Saturday nights last longer.
Well,
You
I think that's a problem we all have.
do these events on like 4 hours of sleep each night.
Right.
Yeah, not anymore.
Right. Well, I've always felt that same way, Rich, because when there's never going to be enough money. I mean, it's motorsports. Money doesn't come out of it. It stays in it. And then it blows up in race engines if you're unlucky. Or if you are lucky, you won a few extra bucks winning a race or something. But it has to be fun and it has to be driven by passion. Quite honestly, I mean, there are times where I just live and breathe and can't get enough of it. And then other times where, man, it gets old. Short course was a lot of work for a lot of those years. And the last few years doing it kind of sucked. It hurt because you go to these events and you don't see that they're as bright and shiny as the last one. And you see you're worried about truck count and worried about venues happening. And it's kind of like, too much about the health of the sport, and it hurt for a while, and then, hey, I think a lot of times you need change, and, hey, we're changing vehicles or changing programs and getting involved in the desert. And man, it's awesome. And there's no reason to worry about truck counts, but it costs a piece of money, and the logistics are tough. And just this morning, I was looking for hotel rooms. Even right now, hotel rooms are a pain in the ass because they're all bought up already. Or, there's whatever you got to do, you got to put all of yourself in it if you want to be successful.
True. Very true. And that's life in general, whether it's motorsports or your work,
Right.
the job that you go to, your family, all that. It's
Right.
all of it's work, or,
Right.
there's effort. There's got to be effort.
Yep.
Sure enough.
And so, like, looking forward to my kids, what, I love for them to race. We've run the Baja 500 together in ETV. We've done things here and there. At the end of the day, it takes as much money as anything else and time. So do I want them to enjoy racing? Absolutely. But what I want for them more than anything is for them to find what they're passionate about, like I am racing, and throw themselves at it and be successful because they're driven and they feel rewarded from it. If it's racing, great. But I'm not predetermined to make it racing.
Awesome. That's good advice for any parent.
No,
I coached Little League football, Pop Warner, for quite a few
Okay.
years because,
Yep.
Little Rich was wanting to play football. And I got into the coaching end of it, really loved it. But there were parents out there that were just on top of their kids. And
Right.
there was one parent in particular out of Northern California. I can remember his kid wanted nothing to do with football. He wanted to go play the piano that his mom had in the den and learn to become a pianist.
Right.
And his dad says, no, that's not what boys do. You're going to become a football player. And that kid wanted no part of making contact. And if you're going to play football, you got to understand there's going to be contact.
Right.
And he was dead afraid. And I said, okay, fine. I'm going to protect this kid because that was the only kid I ever coached that I couldn't get him, teach him how to hit and take a hit. So I protected him, and his dad came unglued. You got to do this, you got to do that. And I had a Jesus, come to meeting with him, sit down, talk. I do that a lot with people, and I just sat him down. And said, listen, I don't care who you are, what you think your kid needs, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Your son wants no part of this. Give him the opportunity to do what he wants to do.
Right.
And see what happens. Maybe in another year or two, he'll come back to it. But you force him now, he will never, ever do it. And he'll hold a grudge against you.
Right. And you're going to lose either way. I think at the end of the day, my kids will be involved with racing and love racing, but would I advise to them to be a pro race car driver? I don't know. It's kind of gnarly, Rich. I mean, there are times back in the day when they were young, we were living out of our trailer. We'd go from here to there and around to different event sites. And you know what? I loved it. It was fun. It was great. I don't know. We got tied down in the rat race and things changed, but it's always been an adventure. That's what I've told people. It's always been an adventure. Highs and lows and ups and downs. I can remember changing, I think it was after one of your events out in Hannibal. Is before or after that, my wife and I had to change our transmission in the rain, and it was cold, and that's like a 3-hour job on a good day. That wasn't a fun day. But then we went on. We went down to the Appalachians and hung out there, and I think maybe then we went to Jellicoe after that, did an event. So it's there are highs and lows, but it's an adventure.
You should thank your stars that you have a wife and a partner like Natalie that understands that this is important to you, and that helps make that happen, and is not throwing up walls and, locking the doors for you to be able to do that. It's really important to have the right people with you and behind you, whether it's crew, family, marketing partners, whatever, to make it all work.
You're very right about that, Rich. And it is my wife, it is my family, it is marketing partners, and doing it year over year, being gone for substantial amounts of time, it can be tough. And if you go read race car driver books, it says you got to be greedy to be a race car driver. And some days I feel greedy and I don't like it. You got to take, and you got to realize that if you're not willing to take and push hard, then the next car over, he'll leave his wife, he'll move, he'll go broke to beat you. It's that cutthroat. And so I guess you got to decide your limit, and my limit has always been my family's going to be first. I'm not going to get a divorce out of this. I'm not going to lose my house. I'm not going to go broke, but I'm going to do everything I can within that box, which might mean pissing off my wife every now and then. But, it's hard. It's hard on a family. There's a lot of travel. For the virus, I really wasn't quite sure how I was going to make it through this spring with the amount of travel, with back-to-back events. There's so many great events going on now. So it's kind of been a welcome respite to come home and spend some time at home. And then when racing picks up, we'll be right back at it. Awesome.
So the spec trophy truck is where your focus is now. What are you looking at? Is there anything else that's on that checklist, that's a potential that, like, wow, I'd really like to try that?
So one thing I've always wanted to do is, I don't know, to me, to make it feel like I'm a Baja guy. I've been racing down there for 12 years, but what do I want to do? I want to run my own truck in the 1,000. Why? I don't know, because it's a hell of a lot of money. It means bringing other drivers on and everything, but I want to feel like I've done that, and I want to be competitive doing it. I have, over the last couple of years, kind of as an aside to racing, I've started doing work for Ford and been involved with the development of the Bronco. And I have some goals there that I would like to accomplish that probably can't be made public right now, but I've always been a Ford guy, and I love the fact that Ford is coming back so strong in off-road, and they're so focused on it. So I definitely want to do that. I want to race a whole Score series, although it's tough. It's just tough logistically, money-wise, but it's great. And I want to race in Mexico. I'd like to do, looking further down the road, I think I'd like to do some expeditionary stuff. Now isn't the best time to be talking about long distance travel, but I want to go down into Central America. I want to go down into South America and see a lot of that and do it in a vehicle. I've gone across the Australian outback. I bought an old 78 Land Rover and went over there for a few months, and that was great. And I learned a lot about myself, and I want my kids to experience that and enjoy that. I have some desires there, and obviously I want to keep racing. I want to keep running King of the Hammers and be focused on the desert and go haul ass in a spec trophy truck and fly over those blind rises.
Excellent. So we've touched all the bases. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on?
I don't know, Rich. I think we've covered so much about my racing career and my thoughts on racing. I guess I very much appreciate the opportunity, and I really do appreciate what you do for the sport and what you do for the guys coming up in the sport. And you've always been there, whether it's doing media stuff, the magazine, events, and it's always much appreciated.
Okay. Well, remember, anytime you want to write for 4Low, you can do it, because you've always provided great stuff and insightful, whether it's, trips with your son, your kids, whether it's about, what it takes to do something, you want to put together some tech, anything that you have time to do, we'd be more than happy, because
Well,
it's been a
I'll make
pleasure.
sure to carve out some time because it'll come to light someday, but I've been involved in some pretty cool stuff with the Bronco that I'd love to talk about. And, generally I like writing articles anyway, so we'll get you something together.
Perfect. We'd love to be that outlet for you. Thank you so much, Brad, for being part of my life for a long time and sharing your life with us here, on this podcast, but also, sharing your life in racing and rock crawling with us over the years. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, likewise, Rich. It's been a wild adventure, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. That it has.
Right on, man. Thank you.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.